physics historically has two large, category, two large party. One, particle physics, and these people look for fundamental laws of, let's say, two particles interacting on a collider, etc. Make the setup as simple as possible, and then just describe their behavior in a really precise mathematical form. But other people, other half, are seeking all the physics of emergence. Last century, Phil Anderson and these people who used to, who worked on how collection of electrons interact together to create really fascinating emergent phenomena. So these people said, okay, you need some different way of thinking if you want to deal with like many particles. And then I think physics of intelligence can really just push that direction even farther. We need like new mathematical tools. And in particular, for example, computer scientists has been building a lot of category theory and these mathematical theories about structure. But then this has been just closed for mathematics. But then we can take these tools and then apply in an empirical science way, where these models are not just mathematical thing, but then these models are there to make prediction about what's going to happen in this complex AI model, and then we can use that mathematical tool as a modeling tool.
So Hidenori Tanaka-san from Harvard University, welcome to our show.
Thank you.
So you launched a program called Physics of Intelligence, and you're an expert in AI. So first of all, could you elaborate on what is physics of intelligence?
Yeah, so physics of intelligence, physicists has a long history of working on neural networks, like human brain. People have been using mathematical tools to understand how collection of neurons fires and create, collective dynamics. But then what's really exciting about generative AI right now is that it's starting to show remarkable behavior while it being a neural network. So these are, the same neural network, but then it can really talk, it can draw things. In some way, it is truly intelligent. I think it's going to become so. It's becoming so. And my high level, interest is to connect all the fascinating questions like what is thought, what is creativity, what it means to be like a creative thinker, etc. Or the questions from psychology being connected to mathematical modeling and experimentation using generative AI as an experimental platform.
Yeah. I see. So before going into the details, just a quick question, because you're an expert in AI. So what's ChatGPT 5 will be like? Because Bloomberg reported that it'll be kind of like an organization. I don't know what that means, but what's your impression of it?
Yeah, okay. So there are many there are many axes to think about it. But then one of the short way of summarizing what I believe going to happen is that it's going to have a sense of time.
Time.
Yeah. And then it has like multiple meanings. So when the AI first came out, image classification or even playing Go, what people used to say is that if we human can do some task in, let's say, 10, 20, whatever short amount of time, then you can let the AI do it. For example, you show an image, and then it doesn't take time for us to classify whether it's a dog image or cat image. And then, as we've seen already, state-of-the-art image recognition, image classification, AI models can do that, right? But then when it comes to tasks that requires like a longer, let's say, thinking, right? You present some math word problem, or some people are trying to even prove new mathematical theorems with language models. But then that requires like step-by-step planning, precise execution of the planned steps, etc., etc. And then that requires like longer time of thinking. Another transition that's happening with GPT 4.0, and then that's going to continue to happen, is that the AI model going to treat much more dynamic data. Meaning, right now, ChatGPT, it's just processing set of words, text as text, right? But then we speak in sound, like voice, right? And then this voice information also has a lot of content. For example, when I say, "Oh, I'm excited," there's no way I'm excited about it.
Oh, so you made, in a slow way, you said you were excited, but I kind of get the nuance.
Yeah. When I'm really excited, then I say I'm excited. That's how we say it. And then these information is in the voice, like it's a dynamical, sound waves. And another example is that we were seeing a lot of video models coming out, and then even though we were saying, oh, AI can generate image, it's now becoming a video, and then these things will be coupled with language and another modality, right? So that's another sense of time. And then one last thing is that it's going to have like much larger and larger context window. So the context window is the amount of text information that AI models can process at the same in one time. But then that's increasing, and then Google Gemini now has a 2 million context window. What that means is that you can talk to AI from, let's say, age 1, age 3, 4. As soon as you start talking, and then you can keep talking with single AI models for your entire life. And then that AI model will remember what you said, maybe even what you did, if you interact with computer, and then say, yeah, like I'm in this situation, I feel sad today. But then the AI model will say, oh, you were in the same situation 5 years ago, and this is how you handle it, or something like that. So it's going to have like longer and longer, more dynamic sense of time.
Interesting. So sense of time. So we have Dr. Ken Mogi as second guest. What do you think about his prediction of GPT-5? And
listen to your really wonderful ideas, Hide. So it's really interesting that you mentioned time, because Nick Bostrom actually published a survey paper several years ago, and in which he asked many AI experts what particular discipline would provide the most insightful inspiration for AI research from here. And the top of the list was surprisingly cognitive science. So, so I think when you say time, I think it could be argued that AI technology hasn't really addressed the problem of memory in a genuine sense. So do you have any insight how memory would be dealt with in AI systems from here?
Memory, like what is the most specific?
Because cognitive memory is different from computer memory. I mean, it's computer memory is a state that would correlate with a particular state in the past. But human cognitive memory involves, for example, emotion, as you mentioned, and also it deals with a really acute sense of the passage of time, which is really an enigma, even for physicists. And Albert Einstein famously admitted that he cannot actually understand the essence of the now, because in his theory of relativity, the whole history of the universe is actually a pattern in the four-dimensional space-time. So there's no sense of the passage of time or the now moment. So, but human cognitive processes actually are based on these very realistic properties of time. So I think if AI wants to be genuinely human-like, it somehow incorporates, it needs to incorporate the concept of time somehow, right? So I think what you mentioned is really, really interesting. So do you have any insight on that?
Yeah, I think one way people characterize intelligence is like compression of information,
right?
And then I think the sense of time, and then also many others like emotion, etc. are these. I think what's really happening is that we, let's say like our brain, which is a collection of neurons, like experience stuff, and then let's say have some like resonance of what happened, and then let's say when it comes to emotion, then like many neurons are firing in certain pattern. That's what physically happening. But then when I say, let's say I'm happy right now, happy corresponds to some state of these like many neurons here. So this like there is a compression happening, and then also when I remember some event that happened before, then again I just, let's say when I'm hit by car or something, right? And people always say that when we are in a sudden accident, then you have a really fine resolution of what happened. Even though the moment that the car hits someone is like just a second, then but that feels like a minute or even 10 minutes, whatever,
right?
Because you remember all the details, right? So this is all has to do with how we, as a subjective, agent, summarize what's happening in our outside world or in our brain, and by compressing the information, right? And then I think this is a great point because I think operating and understanding things in this compressed information layer is crucial, even for chatting. For example, when I talk with ChatGPT, I think the way most people use it is by just asking some question to get an information and then get the information back and then just finish the conversation, right? But then the type of conversations that can go on for like hours, like 1 hour, 2 hours is, for example, the space that we have to now think about is, for example, emotion, right? Like emotion moves when we're talking with someone for an hour, and then that really just sustains a kind of
and you feel like a connection between
between etc. So these are the like a different space. Here's a raw text space, and then there's a more summarizing like emotion or sense of time, etc. These another layer of things, and then right now like AI kind of operates at this just raw text layer, but then we have to, when AI wants to have like longer conversation, for example, what you have to control is not just like a word by word, sentence by sentence, like sequence of text. Rather, it can be some like latency thing that we might need to explicitly design it, but then it might also just as well emerge, which I'm really curious about.
I think the roadmap for AGI by OpenAI, reported by Bloomberg, is quite interesting, and you actually discussed it in our earlier conversation, and you said agents are really going to be very important. But agents actually are based on a computation of scarcity rather than a computation of abundance, I think, because our memory are limited. Many research suggests that the bandwidth of cognitive processing is probably around 100 bits per second. So that's all we can handle.
That's the limit.
Consciously, right? So, but AI do not have that kind of limit. But when we make plans and when we execute our actions, we are living within that window of scarcity. So in order to understand human agency, I think AI somehow needs to build on a computation of scarcity, right?
That's a great
point. But right now, it's everything is developed according to a computation of abundance. So that's a huge difference.
I think one kind of related thing is that when let's say when we build AI that does physics, and then I think it's known that a lot of the best physicists are kind of really visual thinker. Even when people hear physics, Einstein, Feynman, like if you look at the Feynman's textbook, it's all about intuitions and pictures, right? And then what that suggests is that you might guess that physics can be just long list of equations, but then these people compress the information into the visual domain, and then that really allows a jump in the thinking, in the sense that one of the Feynman's Nobel-winning calculation, which he also got together with like Schrödinger, another amazing physicist, but then these two people arrived at the same conclusion from Schrödinger, had a long list of equation, which is mathematically precise and beautiful, but then Feynman was more jumping around in thinking in this visual domain, and then got to the same conclusion, which kind of suggests that any innovation that requires like jumping things can be coming from, as Professor Mogi said, it can come from like a scarcity and limitation of things, because you have to compress the information, high dimensional information to image, and then have some intuition in this space, and then project that back to the mathematical equation, etc., etc.
So probably in that fundamental sense, physics of intelligence probably need to go beyond the physics of materials or physics of things that we have had in the 20th century and so. So interesting. This is a really tricky question, but people have been discussing the theory of everything, right? And the standard model of particle physics and so on. But do you think that this physics of intelligence is within that, theory of everything, or something beyond it?
So I would say that physics historically has two large, category, two large party. One particle physics, and these people look for fundamental laws of let's say two particle interacting on a collider, etc. So that's make the setup as simple as possible, and then just describe their behavior in a really precise mathematical form. But other half are seeking all the physics of emergence. Last century, Phil Anderson and these people who used to who worked on how collection of electrons interact together to create really fascinating emergent phenomena. So these people said, okay, you need some different way of thinking if you want to deal with like many particles. And then I think physics of intelligence is going to really just push that direction even farther, right? Because the study of all the many body quantum mechanics, etc., are really governed by laws of thermodynamics, which assume that you have a lot of random particles interacting, and then as a result of random particle interacting, things emerge. But then I believe that the essence of intelligence should be in the structure that it learns.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Yeah. So I think it's even though it's a popular way of thinking, analogizing the brain and the many particle interacting, etc., because both are emergent. But I believe that we need totally different approach for attacking intelligence, because again, if you want to understand neural network at initialization, which means like it's a random parameter, it hasn't learned anything, then it's the way the parameter is parameterized, etc., is like Gaussian, things are random. But then the whole point of intelligence, whole point of learning is to learn about the structure of the world, right? So what I believe is that we need like new mathematical tools. And in particular, for example, computer scientists has been building a lot of category theory and these mathematical theories about structure. But then this has been just closed for mathematics. But then we can take these tools and then apply in an empirical science way, where these models are not just mathematical thing, but then these models are there to make prediction about what's going to happen in this complex AI model, and then we can use that mathematical tool as a modeling tool. If that makes sense.
Interesting.
So you're saying physics of intelligence. So physics means you have to measure something.
Yeah.
How can you measure intelligence? What kind of tools are you going to invent the tool, or can you use existing tools to measure?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think this again touches on the theme of like emergence of intelligence. So people have been plotting on the x-axis the scale of the neural network, y-axis performance of the task, and then people see some rather sudden transition like this. And then people are analogizing this transition with phase transition, where, for example, you have water here and you have ice here, and these are two different phases of water.
Right.
So, and then there's a sharp transition between them at 0 degrees Celsius, so that's phase transition. And then what physics teaches in this kind of context is that the understanding phases and phase transition in physics, one of the most crucial step is about identifying the order parameter. I'm going to explain what it means. So the order parameter in this ice to, let's say, water case, it can be just angle between molecules, like H2O molecules, like because in the ice, things are on a lattice, just like how things are organized in the square. The particles are in the square, shaking hands like this, and then these are lattice. So the angle should be certain angle. But then if you increase the temperature, it's gonna become like water, and then molecules are just circling around.
Right.
And then if you even heat up the water further, then it's gonna become a gas. This transition requires another way of measuring it, which can be like a density of particles, right? So understanding emergence of intelligence, understanding phase transition of intelligence requires us to think about what is the right evaluation metric, evaluation task, which can be some math word problem or etc., which can turn these little bump in the loss function, training, performance, etc., into almost like a magnifying glass, right? You want to turn this little bump with some general intelligence metric into like a big jump using really targeted evaluation metric.
So you're saying that, so let's say ChatGPT 4 is like a ice or something. You think that it will melt someday and turn into water, and we have to use
so detecting that is a key in the sense that we can feel that GPT-3 to GPT-4 things have changed, right? And then if you look at actually one of these plot, think if you just look at how well the model can predict the next word, next token, then things are improving continuously, right? But then evaluating the GPT-3, GPT-4 on much more targeted tasks, like can it solve math word problem, then you see like bigger jump like this, right? And then the natural question is, okay, what can GPT-5 do? Right? But I think this gives us hint in the sense that every intelligent task is composed of elements. For example, if you want to solve math word problem, you have to understand like addition, subtraction, many mathematical elements of knowledge. And then we can benchmark individually whether GPT-4 or GPT-5 can do like one of it, right? And then we can predict that, okay, what this sophisticated task requires for AI model to solve it, we are missing like these elements, right? And then we can just focus on benchmarking on these like elements rather than the whole, right? So these are kind of like decomposing single thing into elemental atomic evaluation with atomic task, and then benchmarking on them, let us at least like a best keep track of the AI progress.
But you're saying that we won't be able to maybe keep track, or when the AI will have like a leap, we won't know what steps it will take, or we won't even understand if it's improving or evolving or not.
Yeah, so I think the good analogy of where we are right now is that let's say you're interested in if a student can solve quantum mechanics exam or how many years it might take, right? One approach, which I think is reasonable, is that to give them, okay, so quantum mechanics, they cannot solve it right now, but then if you do some exam on, again, addition, subtraction, some kind of, a bit more complex mathematics and linear algebra, calculus, and then you can say that, okay, this student has mastered all these elements of mathematical knowledge, then the only next step for the student needs to master is, let's say, probability theory, and then quantum mechanics. I mean, you can just keep track of it, right? So these atomic way of keeping track of AI progress step by step, I think it's going to be like one, simple way.
So this is a very wild question, but something that we need to be asking pretty soon. Do you think AI would be emerging so as to have consciousness? Because this has a lot to do with AI ethics as well, because if LLMs have consciousness, we can't treat them as tools, right? So what is your intuition? Of course, this is a very speculative question.
I think defining consciousness, I think you're the expert, so I'm not an expert on it, so it's hard. But then I would say that, for example, just subjective experience of emotion, for example, I think it's gonna, one statement of it's really becoming already like a key next step in terms of engineering challenge. Again, just let's say, I think the really reasonable next step goal for, let's say, OpenAI, as it looks like, is that they now have a way of like voice conversation with GPT-4, right? And then if the goal is to not just use this chatbot as a information tool, you just like Google, the next goal can be just having emotionally engaging conversation with the user for for extended period of time. Then I think in some way implementing emotion in a sense that ability to recognize AI's own emotion, then understand the mechanism of how AI's own emotion has got there, and then also classifying what the emotional state of the human user, right? And then communicating in a way that just, as I said before, the goal can be to just like manipulate emotion of the other. I think it really touches on the core AI safety issue. But then these things will be like natural next step engineering goal, which in a way require, there will be like engineering challenging.
So, the reason why I asked you about consciousness is because in many, studies, it's found that consciousness is very much related to metacognition, which is very important in confidence judgment and, choices and so on. So, sometime before, the British royal family published a photo with Princess of Wales in it with her family. But it was retracted by news media because it was manipulated, right? So this was a really interesting instance because I didn't realize that the news media had this judgment that if a photo is manipulated in any way, it can't be put on the news.
No, they take it away.
Can you tell us why?
Simply, to put it simply, you cannot put fake news or something that's not real.
So even retouching is
not allowed.
So this is the kind of metacognition that we have about the information that we circulate, right? But artificial intelligence do not have that. So So because they do not have metacognition, so they sometimes hallucinate, and it is a really big issue in AI safety. So one of the argument is that you can't have metacognition unless you have consciousness. So how do you take that? I mean, of course, this is a very speculative stance.
To add context for a newspaper, the lighting is okay, but retouching is not good. And
this is quite interesting.
So there's a difference in that. I think this is only human beings can judge the difference.
And also, this photo of Mr. Trump just after he was shot. probably it's going to be the Pulitzer Prize
Yes, maybe,
winner.
yes.
But the value of the photo is that it's not retouched at all.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's as it is,
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
But nowadays, with generative AIs, we can, of course, generate an image like that
Yeah.
quite easily.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
what's the difference?
Yeah,
Yes.
this is a really
Yes.
important point, I think. So.
Yeah. Okay. There are like many thoughts right
Yeah,
now.
yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
Too
interesting
many
thoughts,
questions.
But then,
Yeah.
but then, I'm actually now like I first started thinking about the human side because I think what a fact means is really becoming like the boundary is like really blurred right now. And then, as you said, like I think we are already at the point where we look at some like a video on the internet, some news media. There's no way to tell if it's real or not, right?
Yeah.
Because like we used to trust like video, voice recording, etc., as a kind of proof for some incident has happened. But then I think that sense of proof, that sense of kind of security about the fact, is already kind of gone, right? Anything can, if people have that intention, you can just create anything, and I think that's really just shaking the fundamental kind of backbone of democracy, because like democracy, we are supposed to get facts from media, etc., and then we are the one make judgment. But then I think we are kind of now the first step of that process of like knowing what a fact is shaking, and then that was my first thought about it. And then
because I used to know Roger Penrose when I was doing postdoc in Cambridge, and he doesn't believe in the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics, and he doesn't like quantum Bayesism, the so-called cubism, right? So that's his sense of the truth about physical reality. But many people believe that a quantum Bayesian approach is not bad, and many people are okay with the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics, right? So I think it's something that is very at the core of our existence, right? How to judge truth, how to make choices and so on. That's probably we are conscious, and I'm just asking this very practical and empirical question because you are so interested in doing experiments. If it's possible for AIs to have this kind of the same level of judgment and conscience, if you like, without having consciousness. So I think that's an open question. And what is your intuition?
So my intuition is that as long as we can just, because AI is built with like optimization, etc., and then as long as we can turn any kind of function of consciousness into like optimization problem, then there's a way to just train it. So I think this I think it's the same with emotion. Like when we say I have emotion, for example, right? I can be talking about some real, I don't know, some like hormone emits in the brain, etc. So that kind of like real emotion, but then there is also like functional emotion. If the goal is to just collaborate with someone by reading the other person's emotion, there is a way to just kind of hack it algorithmically, which is I think also what's happening with ChatGPT, in a sense that I tell ChatGPT some bad things many times, but then ChatGPT's model is aligned. So even though there's a harassment thing, right? We can just do kind of harassment to AI models, but then the only thing that ChatGPT says, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm going to improve," etc. But then even though that's just like behavior pattern that they learned, so I think that kind of thing can be done. So kind of like approximating the function of consciousness, I believe it's
So one of my former students, Ken Suzuki, he founded Smart News, and he really has this practical problem how you can treat news generated by generative AIs in a safe and sound way. This is a literally $1 billion question, right? How do you feel? I mean, this whole thing about
I doubt that you can teach an AI to of kind of ethics or values, because this changes. For instance, maybe 10 years ago, Photoshop a photo was not allowed, but even on magazines, some photoshoppings are allowed right now. So the ethics and the boundaries are changing. And it's different. It's very difficult to teach an AI to, tell that the boundaries are changing and the ethics are changing. So you said that you can kind of, teach an AI about the ethics and boundaries, but I doubt that.
But even the current ChatGPT, there is a process of, after training the original model, they first, let the human evaluator say, oh, thumbs up, thumbs down, and then there is an AI model that's going to mimic this, human preference, etc. So we can think of keep updating, or if anything, if the AI model just keep adapting with, let's say, user engagement on the internet, etc. I think that can technically happen. But then one thing is that I think one nice analogy to think about is that there's a kind of noise canceling feature in the headphone, right? So that's like one really meta, in the sense that if I'm wearing if I'm wearing noise canceling headphone, I can just turn it on and off, and then it just changed the reality in a really nuanced way, right? Because like if it's off, then I hear everything from outside. If it's on, I feel like I'm in this quiet room.
Zone, yes.
And then I think similar thing, I think, some companies like SoftBank, for example, was talking about like emotion canceling, in the sense that there's a call center and then, people yell at the telephone operator, and then, but then their goal is to just keep the content while canceling the emotion. Which is included in the voice.
Canceling an emotion.
If someone is like yelling at you, you can just hear the word with a monotone.
Without that
emotion.
Voice.
So I think that's these kind of like manipulation of reality per se is happening of course in the news media, all that, and then I think it's gonna just come into like every part of our physical sense of existence. Yeah.
So Hide, you're in Boston and you're in a really wonderful place where there are people like Lawrence Lessig, who says cause is law, and how you can control people's behavior through manipulating the system. And Michael Sandler, of course, who's famous for justice lectures, and who, for example, mentioned the trolley problem. So when you say, physics of intelligence, of course, that would ultimately include all these things. Code is law, the trolley problem. So I'm just curious. Of course, on a very fundamental level, as Max Tegmark is putting forward, we can study the mechanistic interpretability of neural networks, which is a really important part of physics of intelligence. But on the other hand, we have Cauchy's law and trolley problem, and I believe that the range of possible physics of intelligence investigations can include all these things as well. So what do you feel your challenge and your team's challenge is, based in Boston, surrounded by all these wonderful people? So do you have any interesting future?
Yeah, I think I'd say like all of these are kind of like our advantage in the sense that it's really interdisciplinary field. I mean, I mentioned the psychology, but then of course politics, law. I mean, so they're just what we are working on touches on like every aspect of it. In particular, I think it's really helping us that the Harvard is not just technology university. Harvard has even bigger humanity department traditionally. People who are, for them, I think regulating AI, what should be done there is a huge issue. And then actually, one of my students was taking a law class.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, he's like really passionate, genuinely about the, building AI trustworthy.
Wonderful.
And then he is like one of the best AI researcher, but then also was taking law class to bridge the two, because there needs to be someone who can talk, both language to just say, okay, what is copyright issue? What is ethical in this AI application, et cetera, et cetera.
Do you think Harvard itself is intelligent itself? Because, level 5 should be organization. Do you think Harvard is one of intelligence?
AGI. Harvard is an AGI?
AGI.
I feel the AGI.
Or natural general intelligence, MGI or whatever. But what do you think is a wonderful input from NTT research? Because I've seen some Harvard media coverage of this movement, and they seem to be quite excited.
I think what's really unique about NTT is their or our long-term way of thinking. NTT, as everyone knows, has been kind of at the backbone of Japanese society for many years. And then I think the trust is like one of our core value. And then building trust, I think, is becoming essential in AI. And I think also like another important value of NTT is that we're a trusted partner. We're not just trust, but we're going to be trusted partner. But then the way this partner, just like Microsoft Copilot, etc., like this partner now means like AI partner. Like in one way or another, we're going to replace what we human used to do, even in business, with AI. And then building trust means like understanding each other, etc., etc. And then I'm really proud. Like we are really proud that NTT has, together with Harvard Center for Brain Science, established like one of the first kind of this like physics of intelligence program, which I think it's really a great way to just bridge all different fields that have to be connected from now to build this like a new foundational academic field. But then I think NTT's contribution really made it possible to just connect humanity, science, AI, physics, like psychology, all of these things.
Especially in this era.
In this era, I think we were able to just pull off one of the first kind of movement towards kind of emergence of new academic field necessary for the next.
Okay, Hide, I think we need to wrap up. Any final comments? We talked about the physics of intelligence, totally new field, very innovative. Any final comments for our viewers?
Yeah, I think this field is really exciting not because there's fascinating thing already. I think it's really exciting because like we, as in myself, but also can potentially like many of you who are watching this are able to contribute in a formative way, right? Because physics has like such a long historical field, and when I started physics, my question was, okay, it's been amazing reading about past physics, but what's the next thing to do? Because I'm now on the side of researchers who are supposed to build new physics, right? And then I think one of the kind of quote that I love is that the founder of quantum field theory, that professor said when he worked on particle physics was a mess. And his message for the young people is that don't go because something is clean and elegant. Go because there's a mess, and then where there is a mess, there is an action. I think if you look at AI, it's a huge, amazing mess. Like there's so many problems. Like
that's
so many
such a wonderful inspiration for people, I think.
Yeah. So I think go for the messes.
Go for the mess.
That's where the action is. Yeah. So that was I think Professor Weinberg. Yeah, he said it in a message for young people, and then I think I'm really believing it.
That's
and
wonderful.
We want to build the field together. Yeah.
Great. So Dr. Ken Mogi and Hidenori Tanaka-san, thank you for joining our conversation. ありがとうございました。
Thank you.
はい。